Police in the French town of Trebes have shot down a gunman in a hostage-taking situation at a supermarket. The gunman killed 2 people and injured 3 others before he was shot dead by the police. Reports say that the gunman had sworn allegiance to the Islamic State. He entered the supermarket at around 11 in the morning local time and took 8 people hostage. The French President Emmanuel Macron has termed this a terror incident.
In our country, in the south of France, and everything leads us to believe that indeed it is a terror attack, which is, as I said, still ongoing. The police, and in particular the gendarmerie, intervene in a very coordinated manner after what was first an attack against police officers. Please allow me to express our utmost support to all of those addressing the situation. At this point in time, I will not provide any figures. The Paris public prosecutor will shortly provide the relevant information.
WION's bureau chief in London, Mandy Clark, is joining me on the broadcast for more on that story. Mandy, good evening. What more do we know now about this gunman who's been shot dead?
There's not a lot of details about the gunman. What we do know, of course, is that he pledged allegiance to the Islamic State. The big question for the authorities will be really to understand his links to the Islamic State, who he was, and how he got radicalized. That is the most pressing issue for them, whether it was online, some radicalization is happening, he's not necessarily in contact with any of the operatives of Islamic State, or was he in direct contact with someone who was encouraging and directing this attack? So it's understanding his relation to Islamic State. But France has had a number of terror attacks, not recently, as in the last year or so, but certainly there has been a spate of attacks linked to Islamic extremism, and by and large, they found that radicalization does happen online and also in their jails. So another question will be whether he had previous convictions, has he spent time in jails, and possibly was he radicalized there. It's really understanding this pattern of radicalization to ultimately stop it and prevent future attacks.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, Mandy, this is the first, let's say, major terror incident that France is facing after Emmanuel Macron took a charge of the country. Does this indicate, though, that in many ways the IS sleeper cells might be on the quiet right now, but the threat, however, remains very real?
I would absolutely agree with that statement. The Islamic State itself has lost all its so-called territory that it claimed to have in Syria and Iraq. The Iraqi forces have pushed them out of the stronghold that was Mosul, and they had pockets of resistance, but really they no longer have a safe haven in these regions. So we've seen a lot of fighters that did come from Europe who went there to fight jihad there, are leaving the region, and they are actually returning. So that although there has been a lull, a quiet period, is Islamic State attacks, there's a belief, certainly among security forces, that a lot of these people who've been fighting on the front lines of Syria and Iraq with radical ideology are planning to head back into Europe and likely start their own cells and attacks on European soil. So it's a very serious concern that security forces have all over the continent on how to prevent these attacks from happening by people who have been radicalized and have been trained with violent weapons and understanding of bomb making. It's a very serious threat facing the continent.
Right, and therefore his neutralization is only the tip of the iceberg. Lots more investigations will have to be done. Mandy, thank you very much for joining us this evening and bringing us that perspective and update on that story.